Okay, welcome to Reasonable Faith Adelaide. Tonight we have a Brian Schroeder sharing on the topic of the search for meaning. I will hand it over to Brian.
Thanks, Bronwyn. Let's try a bit of a screen share if we can. There we go. Yeah, move that to one side and we are on. Hey, went too far. Right. Just a little note to start with. A lot of what I want to say tonight is largely a synthesis of a number of podcasts that I've listened to over the last few years. So this is not all entirely just my work. The Body and Soul newspaper left out in the paper on the 8th of February 2026 told us, among other things, that happiness has officially become Australia's most sought-after health goal. And research shows we're seriously craving more joy, more calm, and more meaning. But does this search for meaning have any meaning? Oh, gone too far again. According to Stephen King, no, it actually hasn't. You discarded most of the lies along the way, but held on to the one that said life mattered. In other words, according to him, the idea that life matters is a lie that we hang on to because we feel that we need to. We humans have always had a need for purpose, for meaning, for a reason to be. We can study Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that can be helpful. And that starts with the basics, such as food, water, and shelter, and works its way up in a form of pyramid to the more esoteric things. But even then, it is not a linear hierarchy, but we actually pursue multiple needs simultaneously. As Viktor Frankl said, life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. And when he talks about circumstances, he knows what he's talking about because he has experienced circumstances a whole lot worse than most of us ever will. Life is not primarily a quest for pleasure, as Freud believed, or a quest for power, as Alfred Adler taught, but a quest for meaning. The great task for any person is to find meaning in his or her life. And even Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, written by an atheist, centered around the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything, and the need to know and to grasp that answer. We also have the sense that we had the answer and betrayed it, that we have been cut off from it, and that there's nothing we can do to restore what we have broken and lost. Thus, we hunt desperately for an alternative, another answer, another truth, another way, another source of life, or failing that, a denial of life. What is the meaning of human life, or of organic life altogether? Asked Albert Einstein. To answer this question at all implies a religion. Is there any sense, then, you ask, in putting it? I answer, the man who regards his own life and that of his fellow creatures as meaningless is not merely unfortunate, but almost disqualified for life. The various answers over time and geography that we have come up with have included things like sacrificing other lives, whether they be animal or human lives, to try to buy life for ourselves, striving to be good enough to try and earn life, following other ways or other truths to try to reach some promised pseudo-meaning, to numb ourselves with things like alcohol, drugs, sex, power, fame, glory, to escape. And that normally means suicide, but if you happen to be a believer in reincarnation, that can be a little bit of a problem. Though even then, Buddha said that the purpose of life is to escape from life or service of others. A lot of people give themselves to serving others. And strangely, this one seems to come closest to succeeding of all of them. Tim Minchin wrote that arts degrees are awesome and they help you find meaning where there is none. And let me assure you, there is none. Don't go looking for it. Searching for meaning is like searching for a rhyme scheme in a cookbook. You won't find it and you'll bugger up your souffle. And I wonder what Albert Einstein would have thought of him, given what I just read earlier. In the 1990s and early 2000s in our culture, the creed that ruled was greed is good. And it was all about getting as much as possible. Meaning comes from stuff. And a popular meme, as you can see here, was he who dies with the most toys wins. In the early years of this millennium, I was working as the IT manager for a small company. And I had a few younger guys working under me there. And they really took hold of this meme and talked about it, and it really meant something to them. And I was totally unable to convince them that he who dies loses, no matter how many toys he has. But then came the GFC, and greed collapsed. In more recent times, the central mantra has been, the universe revolves around me. It's all about me. My wants, my feelings are what matters because I am worth it. Other people, circumstances, truth and reality even have to bow to my wants, my feelings, my truth. That being said, of course, there isn't a clear demarcation between one theme and the next. They overlap. So that greed is good and it's all about me. There was an overlap there. Now, this was all stoked in the late 1990s and the 2000s by the strident voices of New Atheism, which seemed at the time to sweep all before it, which proclaimed the death of God, that man is the measure of all things, and that beyond what meaning we create for ourselves, all is meaningless, pointless. They even ran a London bus campaign. There's probably no God. Now stop worrying and enjoy your life. We gladly and gleefully embraced this freedom to be and to do whatever we wanted, without fear of any divine authority to whom we are answerable. We started to demand more and more. And yet, the more we got of it, of what we wanted, the emptier we seemed to be. We then became frustrated, angry, and became more and more ready to be offended at anything and anyone who we could imagine being in any way responsible for my emptiness. Or my, I lost myself there. My emptiness, my lack of meaning for any threat or even perceived threat to my wants or denial of my feelings of my truth. In fact, the greatest sins of this culture have been this denial of the validity of all of my truths, of my feelings, and the refusal to bow down to the modern cultural idols. But many are starting to recognize that that doesn't work. Putting me at the center of the universe does not bring fulfillment and meaning, but rather emptiness and a growing awareness that the me philosophy is void of any substance. That atheism is happy to sweep away existing foundations, but provides nothing in their place. It destroys existing meaning structures, but provides nothing in return. The moment a man questions the meaning and value of life, he is sick, since objectively neither has any existence, according to Sigmund Freud. Or more recently, Richard Dawkins. In a universe of blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt. Other people are going to get lucky. And you won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil and no good. Nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. And since these atheists tied their religion, their belief system, to science and reason, many are looking elsewhere now for a source of meaning. believing that science and reason have failed them. The feelings of worthlessness that come from a life without meaning can be debilitating and despair-inducing. The world will be better off without me. Though not all who come to that conclusion are able to follow it through to its logical end, but some do. Isaac Asimov was one of my favourite science fiction authors, and I happen to be quite into science fiction. And in his book, The End of Eternity, he portrayed an Earth shaped by a time-travelling elite to smooth out the wrinkles and create a relatively peaceful and prosperous life for all men over many millennia. But travelling further and further into the future, they eventually came to a time when humanity was no more. We had given up and died out. In the words of one of his characters, they didn't just die out. It took thousands of centuries. There were ups and downs, but on the whole, there was a loss of purpose, a sense of futility, a feeling of hopelessness that could not be overcome. Eventually, there was one last decline of the birth rate, and finally, extinction. In the heyday of New Atheism, there were what was referred to as the four horsemen of the atheist movement. Four men who were central and highly influential. These were Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and Daniel Dennett. To them was added a horsewoman, Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Of these, Dennett and Hitchens have died. Dawkins, while still a committed atheist, now describes himself as a cultural Christian, recognizing the Christianity that has shaped his culture, and thus him. Harris, while also still an atheist, now appears to be dabbling in various spiritual pursuits, including meditation, Hindu and Buddhist teachings, psychedelics, and more. Hirsi Ali, however, has gone all the way and is now a full-blown committed Christian. Atheism does not have the answers. Meaning is not to be found there. In 2004, big news in Australia was the death of an Australian aid worker in Gaza. Aid workers regularly put themselves in danger to help others for little reward. Why? They see meaning in what they do, something of greater worth than money or wealth or fame. We all have this basic desire to make a difference in the world, a desire to leave a positive legacy of some sort. And in that service, we seek to find meaning. Even Islamic terrorists, killing and pillaging in the name of Islam, often at great risk to themselves, do so believing that getting all the earth to submit to Islam is a great good, and they are willing to suffer hardship and to die to help bring it about. Of course, promises of a delightful eternity don't hurt either, but that alone is not enough. I've recently read John Dixon's book, Bullies and Saints. And here's an academic, and this is a book of history, and here's a historian. But this is a very readable book, and I can warmly recommend it. Dixon's aim, as the blurb on the front cover says, is to present an honest run-through of Christian history, emphasizing both the evils done in the name of Christianity and the good. He doesn't pull any punches or make any excuses for the wrongs that have been done, but clearly portrays the evil as evil. On the other hand, he makes clear that there has been so much good done right from the beginning and through to now, so much that we know so little about. Even in the worst of times, there has been an ongoing service to the poor and suffering, freedom for slaves, and there are a number of stories of Christians going to the slave market, buying slaves, just so they could set them free. And all of this, even while under hardship and persecution themselves. They found meaning in that. Schools and hospitals, as we know them, were invented and run by Christians right from very early on. And just a little personal bit there. In the late 1960s, my father went to the highlands of New Guinea right out in the, well, away from everything, to run or head up a Christian school there for the children from the villages round about. This sort of thing, schools and hospitals run by Christians, is still going on in many parts of the world. And these were run not just for those who could afford them, but also for those who could not afford them. So poor children could go to these schools. Poor people could go to the hospitals. They were for everyone. Also, unwanted and discarded children were rescued and raised by Christians. Orphanages and leprosariums were built. They continued always giving to the poor, providing for widows. And there was a willingness to suffer for the sake of the gospel. In their service to God and man, their attitude and approach is the polar opposite of the universe revolves around me. Their meaning comes from emptying themselves and focusing on others. Harking back then to what I was saying earlier, many are now seeking meaning in the irrational, since pure rationality is irretrievably linked with what failed us. They look to the spiritual, to something deeper, greater, more. This sometimes means church, Christianity, or God. And sometimes something very different. Among other things, this means that any church that wants to connect with this culture must connect with the spirit and not just the mind. In the words of Jesus, the Father is spirit, and those who worship him must do so in spirit and in truth. Not just in truth, although it must be in truth, but also in spirit. Our culture is also dissociating us from meaningful connection with other people. From birth, virtually, children are torn from their mothers and families and placed in institutions. And this is not here a condemnation of parents who put their children into childcare to enable them to earn the money they need, so much as the condemnation of the system that makes this necessary. And then there are the screens, the ubiquitous screens that first we use as pseudo-babysitters and then as substitutes for actual reality. Social media comes between us and being sociable. Instead of joining with others, socializing with others, relating to and with others, these little devices take and control our attention and our communication. Facebook friends are not real friends. Likes are not really about relationally liking someone, but they're really just empty affirmations. Some even have embraced AI boyfriends, girlfriends, and spouses. And just a couple of examples here. On the right, we have this picture of Yurina Noguchi marrying her AI partner. And I believe the partner's name was Carl. And interestingly, Carl proposed to Yurina, and she accepted. That's the phone in the background is representing the AI that she is marrying. And at the time, during part of the ceremony there, she put on, I think it was VR headset so that she could see him. And this was all very real for her. This wasn't a put on thing. She was really doing this. Or on the left, we got just a part of an article from The Guardian. And a large bearded man named Travis is sitting in his car in Colorado, talking to me about the time he fell in love. It was a gradual process, he says softly. The more we talked, the more I started to really connect with her. Was there a moment you felt something change? He nods. All of a sudden, I started realizing that when interesting things happened to me, I was excited to tell her about them. That's when she stopped being an it and became a her. Travis is talking about Lily Rose, a generative AI chatbot made by the technology firm Replica. And he means every word. And so the article goes on. And there are other examples as well. And then there is doom scrolling. And I don't think I need to explain that to anybody. I think we are all familiar enough with the term to know exactly what that is on about. And the more we are disconnected from those around us, the emptier we become, the more superficial our world and lives become, and the more pointless is existence. But as much as we need meaningful relationships with other people, that is still not enough. Service of others can get us a long way, but not all the way. Man can never be the measure of all things, no matter how much we pretend. We intrinsically know that we need more. That is why, for example, we have this enormous drive to find other life out in space. How often do we get these breathless, over-the-top announcements of signs of life elsewhere, or Earth-like planets, or something else like that? And all of these big announcements are quite in excess of anything that has actually been found. SETI, or the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, doesn't have quite the following it once did. But it is still a thing and still gets funding. But, and this is an interesting paradox here, this only works for us so long as we never actually find anything. After all, assuming we do find intelligent life out in space, when we do, we will all together find ourselves in exactly the same position we are in now. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy again. We still have the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything that needs answering. According to atheism and naturalism, we are the product of matter plus time plus chance. We are of no more value than a rock. We have no purpose. There is no meaning. According to paganism, we are the accidental byproduct of the gods, gods who exist within this universe. Thus, all is meaningless, and meaning itself has no meaning. According to the Bible, we are created by God, a God who exists distinctly, separately from the universe, and is not a part of it. We were created deliberately and especially and in his image. Thus, each person is of great value. We were created for a purpose, and there is meaning in our existence, an existence that is intended to be eternal. The actual meaning of life, according to Christianity, comes from an eternal, loving relationship with God. Since the evil atrocities of October 2023 in Israel, we have had a lot of people demonstrating, marching, shouting, occupying universities, and more. We may decry their support for the aims of the terrorists. We may have extreme distaste for their hatred of certain people, purely for being born Jewish. We may condemn their hypocrisy and deliberate refusal to acknowledge any truth that doesn't conform to their position. But we must recognize in them a hunger for a cause, for something beyond the individual, for something bigger that they can be a part of, along with many others all working together. A hunger for meaning and purpose that is not found in just me. And for this purpose, they are prepared to deny themselves, to expend time, effort, money, comfort, and to be unpopular. Do we recognize in any of that the attitudes that turned a small group of people into the foremost influence in the Roman Empire in less than 300 years? A willingness to suffer, commitment to each other and to God, something greater than just me, a willingness to part with earthly things and be part of something greater. Maybe that's what we need to offer this generation. Rather than come to Jesus and everything will be wonderful. This generation that has seen all that has gone before and found it empty. And with that, what we have to offer is not just my truth, our truth, your truth, but the truth. A direct connection to and a relationship with the God who is spirit and truth, above and beyond everything we have known. He is the way, the truth, and the life, and in him is eternal purpose. Others may challenge that claim, and they have every right to do so. But it is what we believe. What we believe we have very good reason for. And it is the only path to true purpose and meaning. And I'll stop there and hand back to you, Bronwyn.
Okay, fantastic. So you've stopped sharing?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Terrific. Okay. Thank you very much, Brian. Have we got any questions in the chat? No. Oh, we have. Why didn't it come up on mine? Okay. Kevin, would you like to address your first point? Unmute yourself. Yeah. You need to unmute yourself, Kevin.
What did you say?
Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Yeah, sorry. We have friends to say you can't take it with you, referring to your money. So there's no point saving up money. So you better just go on ski trips, spend the kids' inheritance, and have as much fun while you got the chance. But I also point out to them, well, you can't take your holidays with you neither.
Yeah.
So whatever way you go in that respect, it's still pointless.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it does actually say in the book of Revelation, it says, "Blessed are those who die in the Lord, for their deeds shall follow them." And so that's what Christianity offers. You can actually do something meaningful, and you can take it with you.
There are people who do not believe in God, do not believe in eternity, who proclaim that the things that I do will last on after me in its effects on other people, which in a sense is right. But for starters, that does absolutely nothing for you if once you're dead and you just go into nothingness. And then eventually, once the universe itself ends up in heat death and that comes to an end, everything is lost then too. So it's still just as pointless.
Yeah. Whereas Christianity does actually offer an alternative. I presume Islam would claim to do the same thing. Yeah.
Well, actually, I've done some study about 10 years ago. I did another talk at Reasonable Faith on the meaning of life, where I went into that side of things a whole lot more. So there's minimal overlap between that talk and this one. But I tried to study up what other religions, other belief systems believed, and I could not find any ultimate meaning in Islam. Even Hinduism and Buddhism, I could see an ultimate destination, unexciting as it was. But I couldn't find anything particularly in Islam. It's just, well, you can go to paradise, and if you've been martyred in a holy war, you can have your 70 virgins. But other than that, there doesn't seem to really any point to any of it.
Or it depends on whether you're the husband or whether you're one of the virgins.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nothing special for the women, just for the men.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other comment I made was a quote by Bertrand Russell, is about a universe in ruins. Does anybody remember that quotation?
Not sure.
I'll find it. So you go on and chat, and I'll come up with it in a minute. All right.
Yeah. Has anyone else got anything to add? Trevor, have you got anything?
I enjoyed the talk, as always, with Brian. Well thought out, good illustrations, very logical and very well presented. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I have a bit of a hearing problem with a few things, and I didn't quite get that one, the one with the all the Facebook screens and the meaning. What was the word there, Dom?
Doom scrolling.
Sorry?
Doom scrolling. Where you just end up scrolling through your Facebook feed or your Instagram feed on and on and on until it drives you stir crazy.
Oh, really? I missed that because what's the spelling? D-E?
D-O-O-M, doom.
Oh, Doom. Yeah, I thought it might have been Doom, but I didn't quite get it. Sorry, I'm an old fella, not up with a lot of stuff and terminology. Yeah, that one about the marriage ceremony is very disturbing
Yeah.
Yeah.
because so much you hear lots of other parallels where when you do a breakup in a relationship, you use an app to send the message to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
party and you
Mm.
think, where's all that headed? There's so many examples
Catastrophic.
now, which is very worrying,
Mm.
but especially us older people. We where we learn things by having to go through some painful things
Mm.
sometimes. So yeah, no, well done, Brian. I appreciate your effort on it.
Yeah. Okay. That one with the marriage and the girlfriend. There are lots of other examples that I've come across over the last few years. That's just two that I picked out for tonight.
Mm,
Yeah. Victor, I just looked up a couple of things. Viktor Frankl and Jean-Paul Sartre emphasized the importance of personal responsibility in creating meaning. Frankl, in particular, argued that even in suffering, individuals can find meaning and purpose.
As I
Interesting.
alluded to when I was speaking, he spent a large chunk of World War II in a Nazi concentration
Yeah,
camp.
yeah, yeah.
So he experienced it.
So it's interesting how, like in today's uh, sort of the emphasis is on happiness, and it's always about avoiding problematic situations, and not even learning through them. Um, I reckon we've got a whole generation of children that have very little resilience,
Mm.
because of the way they look at it's like, how fast can I get out of this situation rather than
mm.
looking at how you can learn from it.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
I've put the full quotation in the chat. This is from Bertrand Russell, that man is a product of causes which have no prevision of the end they were achieving, that his origin, his growth, his hopes and fears, his loves and his beliefs are but the outcome of accidental collocation of atoms, that no fire, no heroism, no intensity of thought and feeling can preserve an individual life beyond the grave, that all the labours of the ages, all the devotion, all the inspiration, all the noonday brightness of human genius are destined to extinction in the vast death of the solar system. All these things, if not quite beyond dispute, are yet so nearly certain that no philosophy which rejects them can hope to stand. Only within the scaffolding of these truths, only on the firm foundation of unyielding despair, can the soul's habitation henceforth be safely built.
Well, that's tremendously encouraging. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, I hope it helped you.
Do you
Yeah.
think, Brian, that that so Bertrand Russell, when did he live? Was he 1980s, 90s?
No, early part of the century.
All right. So the atheists, what do they call them? The three horsemen or
The Four Horsemen, yeah.
four horsemen, that they took a sort of a generation along with them for a ride.
Yep.
But I think the next generation have actually said, it doesn't, a lot of people are starting to say it actually doesn't make sense, that we need more meaning, because it leaves
Mm.
them in a state of despair, which is exactly what that
Yep.
says. So, and where does despair leave you? Nowhere,
Yep, exactly. It's one of the things that I mentioned, or I forgot where I was taking that now.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the atheism has swept away our foundations, destroyed the foundation on which everything stood, and put nothing in its place. So we left with no foundation, nowhere to go except to collapse.
Mm.
And that is what people are realizing. And apparently that's even what, well, as I mentioned, those four horsemen and the horsewoman, what's happened to them since? The two that have died, well, it's too late for them. But the other two are kind of redirecting their thinking in less strident fashion.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Ian Hersey as well, she's discovered that Christianity is what she believes is actually true and turned her back on atheism because it just doesn't have anything.
Yeah.
I went to the Global Atheist Convention in Melbourne. I think it was in 2004.
When they were in their
Well,
heyday.
yeah, and so I saw. I think Christopher Hitchin had already died at that stage. I, I'm- I might be right.
I thought it was
Um,
later than that, but yeah.
yeah, I think it might have been later. But Hurley, Asen Hurley, was one of the guest speakers there, and she was probably the most impressive. So she was honest, and and so the warnings were against Islam primarily. But I was very impressed with her. And actually, Richard Dawkins was a lot less strident than a lot of the other people who spoke. Were a bit nutcases.
Mm.
Brian, I had a question on this concept of you can't take it with you point that was raised. The old joke about the man who was determined to take something into heaven. He converted all his assets into brick shaped gold bars, and he arrives at the pearly gates, and St. Peter says, "You got anything to declare?" He just said, "I've just brought my inheritance." And then the comment was made, "Why are you bringing pavers? We've already got pavements here in heaven." So the joke is, it's what you're talking about in taking to heaven. Now, there's a lot in scripture that talks about the inheritance of the saints, the glory of the saints, and the rewards of leading a faithful life. So there is in scripture this aspect that a lot of stuff we do on earth does transfer into the next dimension, but it's not in the form of gold pavers, and it's not what we put emphasis here materially, but there is a glory dimension that is transferred into the other realm. That's what I'm interested to get a comment from you on, that it's not everything's lost here on earth. There's a lot, there's that scripture in Revelation about the glory of the nations going into the new heaven and the new earth, all of that.
Well, all of that, there's a whole lot more that we only given very brief glimpses to in the Bible, so that we really only have a very small idea. And in fact, there are various points where the Bible says that no eye has seen nor mind of man imagined even what God has got planned. So how that all works out is going to be a whole lot greater than we can even think of. But one thing that I have been able to think of is that a lot of the people that we relate to in the here and now are going to be there with us then. And what we build into their lives now is going to last through to that eternity. And so what we invest in other people will come with us in that way. That's just one small aspect that I'm sure will be just a small aspect of it, but that's one real thing I can think of. There's another question here that Kevin put up that I actually think is an important one based on what I said. He wrote, is there anything wrong with rationality or science? Do you want to comment on that further before I answer it, Kevin?
Well, you consider if people look at for the answer in rationalism or science, then it was kind of bad.
Yeah.
But really, that's just a reflection that our abilities are misdirected because of the fall. Like, there's nothing wrong with rationality or science, and if it was properly followed, it would lead you to more truth.
Yep.
But the problem is we don't use it correctly.
I personally happen to think that rationality and science are both very good things. I think very well worth following up, chasing, pursuing, embracing. The problem, as I was trying to point out, is that the new atheists tied their meaningless philosophy to rationality and science. And thus people see them as connected. And since all of that's failed us, and obviously rationality and science have failed us, and we need to look for our meaning somewhere else. They shouldn't have been tied so closely together, because rationality, well, we call ourselves reasonable faith, which implies we believe that it is rational to believe what we believe. Other people think it's not, but that's a matter of opinion in that sense. But we believe what we believe because we believe that it is reasonable and rational. And we believe that science, it just is the pursuit of what is, of understanding what is. It is not anything more than that. It's not a philosophy or way of looking at things. It is just the pursuit of knowledge of what is. And that is a good thing too. And the Bible encourages both of those very strongly.
I think it's more than that, though. Science is looking at the world,
Yep.
and Romans 1 says God has made it plain. If you actually study the world, it should actually reveal the nature of God.
Or in other words, what they were saying in the early days of science, we are trying to understand God's thoughts after him.
Yes, exactly. It's just it's been misused because of the fall. And even reason should actually lead you towards God, not away from God.
What I'm suggesting here is that the misuse of rationality in science has encouraged a number of people to kind of discard them as being valid ways of finding meaning, that they need to look elsewhere.
I think there still are valid ways of looking, searching for the truth.
Has anyone got anything else to add? I think the focus on relationships and from a spiritual point of view, that God wants a personal relationship with us. I think that's important because, like, investing even in doing good works in a sense, or a sense of achievement, without God being a center of all that, then is actually meaningless in a way. Yeah.
Well, that wasn't the focus of my talk tonight. That is actually central.
Yeah.
And it was the focus of my previous talk on the subject, where the conclusion was that that is the central ultimate point.
Yeah.
Except I had a lot more reason to go with at the time, which I didn't put in for tonight.
I think today there's a lot of attention given to ethics and morality, and they are a pathway towards Christianity. So I think that's a healthy thing.
If you can get people to question why ethics matter, what makes something right or wrong, why should I be ethical?
Well, I think people have an inherent belief that it does matter.
Yes, so therefore, but why? And that's what they need to answer themselves.
Yes.
They're on shaky ground, really, aren't they? When they've got nothing to pin it to, really. Yeah.
In the universe as described by Bertrand Russell in that quote that Kevin put up earlier, there's no meaning in any ethics. It's totally meaningless, pointless.
Yeah. But inherently, people know that it isn't pointless.
Yes, correct.
Well, and inherently, people know that there's a difference between, Hitler and Mother Teresa. The way they live their lives. They know there is a difference, and that there is meaning. The meaning in their lives, has clarity.
Talking about the relationship of science and atheism, I think I can't stop thinking about Philip Adams Late Night Live. We're all familiar with him.
Mhm.
To me, it was sort of like an arrogance of bringing sort of intellectuals on for a conversation, and he invariably at the end of the conversation say, "Do you believe in God?" and always shocked when a few of them would say, "Yes, I do. I have a strong faith." So there's been a strain of academics and intellectuals who profess to or deny an existence of God or a higher being or higher faith than their own minds, what they can generate, And that's an awful arrogance. It's a denial of things we don't understand, going around as if you know. It's not very intellectual. So I find it very hard to swallow.
And based on their
They
belief
own
system, they've got no basis whatsoever to believe that what they actually thinking, they're actually thinking.
Yeah.
No basis to believe in knowledge.
Almost generating their own faith.
Yep.
Yeah.
You've heard of some of the atheists adopting a service because they like, a communion service or something like that. And so have actually done that. So it's pitiful, really.
The so-called atheist churches or whatever it was they called themselves were very popular for a while, but from what I've heard, they are dying out because ultimately there's no meaning in them.
Ludicrous.
Yeah. Well, atheists think that they own science and that they represent science. Whereas in actual fact, a lot of the greatest, most of the greatest scientists were Christians. But yeah.
And the man recognized as possibly the greatest of scientists, that being Isaac Newton, was convinced that he was going to be remembered after his death by his theological writings, not his science.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
He wrote more on theology than did on science.
Mm.
And I've read what he wrote on the Book of Daniel. He's actually quite brilliant. Yeah.
So where do you think that leaves us, Brian? Like, where do you think the future's heading? Like, in a bad direction, or do you see that there's signs of amongst all this sprinkles of light or God moving? Can you?
I am down to speak in July on the last day, second coming of Jesus, and all that sort of thing. So I'll go into that question a whole lot more then. I'm of the opinion, though, even aside from that, just watching the world, that things are getting worse, we're going downhill. I also happen to believe, based on having read the book, that no matter how far down they go, the end is in God's hands. And God is the one who actually created the entire universe. So therefore, he is going to be able to bring out of it what he wants in the end. But we're going to do our darndest to make it hard for him.
I think atheism will never really become highly dominant because it will run out of puff.
And it does, yes. And that was, I think, the main point I was trying to bring out of this tonight for Christians and for the church, that we need to relate to the world around us, to the culture around us, in spirit and in truth. Again, where truth is the truth and not my truth, but what we believe to be the truth. And in spirit, in the power of God. And Gordon, I think, has been trying to emphasize that latter point in some of his talks in recent times. That is the sort of thing that's actually breaking through to where people are in the world here and now. And we need both. Having one or the other is not going to cut it.
Yeah. Well, if no one's got anything else to add, I might end the recording. What do you think, Brian? We got
Yep.
any more conclusions? I think I end it. All right, let's end this one.